Three. 3, 2, 1, go! Three, two, one, go! 3, 2, 1, go! Three, two, one, go! 3, 2, 1, go!
how to make a progress bar in Roblox. You set the corner radius to 1,0 and
Welcome back to the second video in my script. Welcome to the first scripting tutorial in this series. So this series is going to teach you how to script on Roblox. Hey everyone, this series is going to teach you how to script on Roblox. And in the first video I thought we'd look at something called properties. So any Roblox object has a list of properties which describes how it acts in the game, how it looks for example. And if you go to the View tab and click Properties, then whenever you select something such as a part, you're going to see these lists of properties. So we've got properties which change the colour of a part, we've got properties that change its transparency, we've got material properties, loads of different properties which change how this part looks and acts. Now these properties are very important. It's very simple. So if we go into the server script service, this is where we're going to put our scripts for this video. We're going to insert a script. Okay, this is a server script. We'll dive into the different types of scripts in another video, but what you need to know, I'm just going to make my script a little bit bigger. What you need to know is that to firstly change a property, you need to tell the script which object you want to change the properties of. So in this case, we want to change this part's property. So let's say we want to change its transparency, which basically tells us whether you can see through a part or not. Now we can obviously change this in the properties window, but what if we wanted to change it while the game is running through a script? Well, we can't just, click it and change it because we aren't controlling the game. We have to do it through a script. So we have to tell the script which object we want to change a property of. And to do that, we reference it. And referencing is just telling the script where the object is in the game. So this part is inside of the workspace. The workspace is a service and it contains all of the parts and objects that we can see in the game, such as this part, this terrain, etc. So to reference this part, very simple, we just have to say game, because the workspace service is in the game. What we're looking at in the Explorer is everything inside the game. So firstly, when we want to reference a service, we have to say game. So we say game, and then from there we can choose one of these services. Now we're choosing the workspace, and then we can choose any object that's inside this workspace, because you can see these three objects, the camera, terrain and part, are all inside of the workspace. When we close the workspace service, you can see they get hidden, and you can see that they're indented slightly, which shows that they're members of the workspace. So anything you can see in the game world that you can interact with and select, such as this part, is in the workspace. So we say game.workspace and then dot each time when you want to reference a new object inside of the previous one. So we want to look inside the workspace and we want to get this part. So let's write out part. That's the name of it. There you go. And it showed up in the autocomplete menu. We now have our part. So now that we've got our part referenced, we've got access to the part, we can now view all of these properties if we click on dot. So if we press dot to insert a dot, you can see all of these blue icon things appear in this list, right? Don't worry about these ones, we'll get to them in a later video. So all of these blue icon things are called properties, things that we can change. So for example, let's choose one of them. We can view all of the properties available in this properties window. So let's choose one. So let's choose transparency. Okay, so once we've now got our property, we can change it just by saying equals, and then we can set it to a new number. Obviously, transparency is a number. It's between 0 and 1. 0 being opaque, you can't see through it, and 1 being totally transparent, you can see through it. So it's a number between 0 and 1, so any number in between will show a degree of transparency. Okay, so if we just set this to 1, then it's going to become transparent. Fully transparent, we'll be able to see through it. So we have just updated the transparency property of this part to be 1. Now, this isn't going to run until we start the game, because all server scripts, like this one here, only start running when the game starts running. Now, this game is currently not running, but to run it, we can click on this little arrow under the play button and click on run, or you can press F8. And if you look at that, the part has disappeared. It's still in the game, but its transparency property has just been set to 1. So that's because the script ran as soon as the game began and instantly set the part's transparency to 0, but we've just manually gone and changed it back to 0 through the properties tab. So that is a property. There are loads of properties in Roblox Studio. There are so many actually that we don't just change properties by setting the property to a new number. For example, if we look at our name property, this describes the name of the part. So I could change this to be called brick, or I could call it Alvin blocks. You can call it whatever you want, but it has to be text, right? It has to be letters and characters. You can also have numbers, but in scripting, whenever we want to set the text of something, such as name, we use something called a string. So let's just set the name property to be equal to something. We still use the equal sign. That just tells the script that we're updating the property to a new value, but this time we want to set it to some text. So if we wanted to call it my part, for example, well, this wouldn't work. We can't just say my part because the script gets confused here. It's thinking, well, I don't know what you mean by my part. It's unknown to me. I can't see it in the game anywhere. It probably thinks we're looking for an object called my part. But to get around this, we just put it in speech marks like this, in these like quotes. So you can use speech marks or you can use these quotes or apostrophes. Now, you can see it's gone pink, and that's because we have just defined a string, and a string is is any characters of text. You can have numbers as well, but to be a string, it's within these speech marks, and that just tells the script that we are inserting some text here and that it shouldn't get confused. This is just some text that we want to set our property to. So this is a string because it is some text, some characters, some letters, numbers wrapped inside these speech marks. So whenever you're setting a name or using some text as a property, you're going to use those speech marks because it's a string. Let's just look at some other properties. For example, material. Now, if you wanted to update the material, what we would do is instead of saying, let's see, what materials have we got? We've got grass, for example. Instead of saying grass, all right, you could say it in speech marks like this, right? But for materials, it's best practice to use something called an enum, an enumeration, like this. So you say enum, and then you do a dot, and then you do the name of the property, so material, and then another dot, and the script will actually give you a list of materials to choose from. And this is what an enum does. It gives you a selectable list. And this is just best practice whenever you're setting something such as a material, which is a drop down. So if you were to select pebble, this would be your property. So you're getting it from a list, and that's what an enum is. It is a little bit confusing. You may be wondering, why can't you just put it in speech marks? But it's best practice to put it as an enum. And an enum is just it's just a list. It lets you choose from a predefined list, and that is just best practice for Roblox scripting. If you run this script, you can see immediately, hold on, we have an error. Alright, so to update, it's will print out an error message, and it says server script. So in this server script 1, line 1 here, you can see line 1, part is not a valid member of workspace. So it's saying I looked in the workspace for a brick called part, and it's not there. And that's because we changed the name to Alvin Blocks. So let's change that to Alvin Blocks and run the game. Properties too, so not just numbers but also strings. Whenever we want text, we wrap them in those speech marks. Materials, we use enums, and also for properties such as anchored, archivable, can collide, for example. Can collide is a property which we'll learn about in the future. You can also set them to be Boolean values, and a Boolean value is true or false, and that represents whether one of these boxes would be checked or unchecked. So false would be unchecked, true would be checked. We'll be looking at those properties in another video. But thanks for watching your first Roblox scripting tutorial.
I need to find the best way to learn math.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to your second Roblox scripting tutorial. Now in the previous video, which I recommend you go and watch if you have not already, it was on properties, and in that video we encountered an error, and the error was that we were writing some code which set the transparency property of a part which was named part in the workspace. But actually we had then gone on to rename the part before we ran the script, and so it threw an error in our code. Now I'm going to show you how you can debug these errors, because sometimes you'll be thinking, well, why is this script not working? Sometimes it might not even throw you an error message. So how do you figure out the line where your script stopped working? Actually work. We can print a message to this output code here, right? Let's just set this one to Alvin Blocks so it will actually work. Right, let's put this at the top here. Let's just do a couple of these. Right, so in these lines of code, one of them is not going to work. So let's imagine we didn't know which one was going to cause the error. What we could do is we could use printing. So if we print, we can print a message to this output window, which I spoke about yesterday in the last video. So we can print out a message, and that message could be a number, like 32, and it will appear in the output window here. There you go, can you see that? It's printed out 32. Now you can also print out text, but like I said in the previous video, you can't just go writing out text like this, hello guys, that's not going to work. And you've got these lines underneath because the script is confused. So what you need to do is, because it's text, we need to wrap it in a string by using speech marks. So if we use speech marks, it goes pink, that tells us it's a string. And now, if we run, the code is going to print my text, hello guys. So this is just printing a message to the script underneath, because it's prints of lines. What we could do is we could use printing. So if we print, we can print a message to this output window, which I spoke about yesterday in the last video. So we can print out a message, and that message could be a number, like 32, and it will appear in the output window here. There you go, can you see that? It's printed out 32. Now you can also print out text, but like I said in the previous video, you can't just go writing out text like this, hello guys, that's not going to work. And you've got these lines underneath because the script is confused. So what you need to do is, because it's text, we need to wrap it in a string by using speech marks. So if we use speech marks, it goes pink, that tells us it's a string. And now, if we run, the code is going to print my text, hello guys. So this is just printing a message to the script. So you can see the potential uses of printing. You could print out to say that a certain line has ran. So we could do a print saying the script has started running, and we can do another one after the second line to say executed line 2, and let's do another one saying we've executed line 4, so we've got past line 4, and we could do another one to say we've got past line 6, and let's do another one at the end to say we have finished running. Now you don't have to do prints, they're not You don't have to have a print to make your script work. This is just to tell you, to give you messages to make sure that your script has operated and ran correctly, right? You don't have to do this for every script. I would only do this when we encounter an error. So let's run the code again and see what happens. Right, so we've got our error here, and we can see that the script had started to run, printed the first print, and then it's set the transparency of the part Alvin blocks to 0. That worked fine, no errors there. And then we go on to line 3, you see it's printed out executed line 2, so we've got here, and then it doesn't print out this one, so it doesn't print out executed line 4. Instead we just get this error. So you can see it works in order. So the script started running, that's line 1, then it's executed line 2 because it's got this far. But then we've got an error on line 4, so the script has totally stopped. So when you get an error, the script just grinds to a halt. It stops in its tracks, so it doesn't go any further. It's got to this line and it's thought, right, okay, game.workspace.part. So I'm going to look in the workspace for an object that's called part. Oh, it's not there. There's no object called part in the workspace. I don't know what to do now. So it's going to just stop right there, and it's going to say, right, that's it, I've had enough, and that's the end of this script. So it's not even going to print executed line 4, it's not going to do any of this, even though this code is correct. Because we had an error up here, the script has stopped, and you can always problem, and then you get a name and leave. So errors are really bad, and most of the time they're caused due to typos, and in this case they are indeed caused by a typo because we called this part instead of Alvin blocks. So if you see an error in the output window, don't fear, just try and use printing to identify where the problem happened if your script didn't work. Your script, when you get an output message like this, an error message, it should usually say which line it finally. So again, ignore this error here, it's completely unrelated. You can see here, the script started to run, executed line 2, executed line 4, executed line 6, and we have finished running. So there you go. The script ran perfectly without any errors, and once it gets to the bottom,
Courage is a quiet determination to be there for our patients, for our communities, for each other.
You ever have a clip you just want to share with your friends, you can't go back in the game and the replay's gone forever? Outplayed has one...
Welcome to your third Roblox scripting tutorial. Today we're going to learn about functions. Now, a function allows you to run code over and over. It doesn't have a look at, and it's not going to be affected. Has got a and okay. When we haven't clicked on a part, we haven't read. Now, when we set a color, we can say color 3, because a color 3 value is made up of 3 RGB values. Okay, color 3, and then we can say dot from RGB, and then we can give a number between 0 and 255. For each colour, so the amount of red, the amount of blue, and the amount of green, and it will mix it together. For now, and a parents, children, and the property as well. Okay, Boolean value. A Boolean value is either true or false. It can't be anything else. So if it's true, then it's going to be. Well, if we were looking at the anchored or not anchored. So if we keep anchored as false, and we lift it up into the air, and we run the game, it's going to fall straight to the ground. But if we change anchor to true, which means that it from script stuff in the future, if you want to go to the next video, there'll be a thumbnail on my scripting series. Now, if you're enjoying the series so far, please don't forget to give me a like on the video and subscribe if you're interested in more script used later on. Of this, obviously because it's got a space in it, and Lua won't allow spaces in names. So when we go and run this, it's not going to go transparent because the script has encountered an error. So when a script encounters an error, it's going to stop, and you're not going to see the expected result. So we're going to open up the output, and the output will allow us to debug our scripts. Now, don't worry about this stuff. This is just because of plugins I have which don't work. But you can see here, the script has given us a message. So it's saying script service.script. That's telling us where the script is. So here it is. And it's saying 1. So 1 means the line number. You can see how it counts the lines as you go down. So it's telling us which line it's stopped on. So line 1. And it says equals expected near brick. And we've got an equals, but the issue is because of this red line, because of this name. So how do we get around this? If you've got a space in the name of your instance or object, you can put it in square brackets, okay? So you're not going to need the dot over here by workspace, but you're going to need it by transparency. So instead of saying game.workspace.mybrick, we can do square brackets. And then inside of these square brackets, we can do quotation marks or speech marks. And then you can write the name of the brick, no problem, because it's a string. And a string is a data type of text, which is acceptable by Roblox. So this time, if you go and try it out, it goes fully transparent. And if we look in the output, there's no errors from our script, okay? So that's the first thing I had to get around. The second problem is if you're and a string is a data type of text, which is acceptable by Roblox. So this time, if you go and try it out, it goes fully transparent, and if we look in the output, there's no errors from our script, okay? So that's the first thing I had to get around. The second problem is if your name is a number, okay? So 56, okay? And we try and do the same thing again. Game.workspace.56 .transparency equals 1. This is going to cause an error as well, because you can't just have, well, it's because the name property of a part is a string, and a string is text, and a string should be written like this, okay? Because the data which goes into this name property is a text, not a number, we have to, again, put it in a string. So you can't just put numbers like this, because it would just go blue and then the script will get confused again. So again, square brackets, and as a string, just in speech marks like this, we put 56, and then we need the dot after the square brackets to indicate what workspace.gravity. How does the script know that just in speech marks like this, after the square brackets to indicate what property we're trying? And again, run the game and it will go transparent. So that's they are just a couple of things that you could have when you and we call this part a gravity, okay? But the workspace also has a property called gravity. So we have a part called gravity in the workspace and a property of workspace called gravity. So when we say game.workspace.gravity, how does the script know that we want to change this property of workspace, or whether we want to reference and access the part called gravity? What you'll want to do, if you want to get the property, then it's going to by default find this property, okay? It's going to go to this first. But if you actually just want to find the name of, you want to find the part, instead of doing a dot, you could say :find first child. And what find first child does is it looks for only the things inside of workspace. So we're not talking about the properties here. A child, as I said, is something inside of another thing. So these parts, camera, terrain, baseplate and gravity, are all part of the workspace. They're all children of the workspace. So we're finding the first child with a name, gravity. And then you can do something like setting the transparency to 0.5. Okay, so try that again. And there you go, it goes half transparent. But again, the transparency to 0.5. Okay, so try that again. And there you go, it goes half transparent. But again, if we had just said gravity.transparency, there we go, and run the game, it's got confused because it's gone to the workspace, looked at its property called gravity, and it's tried to set it to a number. But well, no, it's trying to set its transparency because it's trying to find a property of this property, and you can't have a property of a property. So they're just a couple of things which could go wrong, and I've shown you how to. So if we have, let's just change this from gravity to, I don't know, dog, okay, and we clone this part, and we now have two parts called dog. And then, what if you wanted to say game.workspace.dog.transparency, right? Because you want to make them both transparent. Well, you can't. If you try and do this, it's going to only set the transparency of one of them, okay? And this is because the script, it can't tell them apart because they have the same name. So it goes into the workspace and it only picks one of them. It only picks the first one which it finds. So you're going to have to name one of them dog1 and the other one dog2. And then you're going to have to change the transparency of dog1 and dog2 on two different lines like this. So it's only going to pick one when they have the same name in our code. If you get an okay, you can see it's highlighted that you've made a mistake, and it's saying unknown global because it doesn't know what GME means, right? And if you try and run it, it's going to have an error. So if you ever get an error, make sure you've checked to see if you're spelling things right. And look, attempt index global GME a nil value. That's because it's tried to find GME, but it can't find it. And the same thing goes for things like if you spell something with lowercase. Okay, it worked that time because you can actually say workspace in lowercase because it's a service. But if you said, say, part with lowercase, okay, but it's actually got a capital letter to start off with, and we run this, that just means a way to distinguish like this. And you said brick claw, and the same thing goes for if you make a spelling mistake in the name of your colour, it's gonna error. So always make sure you've spelt everything correctly and you're using capital letters correctly, etc. Okay? What you should do as you keep scripting is, just keep checking your scripts as you write them to make sure that the capitalization is right and that you've spelled everything correctly. So, and that way you reduce the chance of making help the to ask. There'll be a logo on screen as well if you want to.
So if I do not find somebody soon, I'll blow up in.
Hello and welcome to the third video in my scripting series. Now, in the previous video or videos, we learnt how to use properties and reference objects in Roblox games. But today we're going to be putting that to use, and I'll be showing you how to create a dice game. Okay, so we've got two dice here, or die, and we have numbered them, and we're going to use a script so that when we run the game, we can roll the dice and then produce a result. So let's get started. Okay, so don't worry about anything in the output here, just going to clear that, and let's get rid of what we currently have. So we're going to want to have two parts in the game for our die. So we're going to click on the part button, and this has generated a part. So we now need to change the properties of this part to make it look like a dice. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do is obviously make it bigger. So we're going to go to the size property, and because size is made up of three numbers, it's called a vector 3 value, okay? And a vector 3 is basically three numbers, and each number represents an axis, okay? So the x-axis, the z-axis, and the y-axis, okay? You can see here on the move tool, the red line is the x-axis, or the red arrows, the blue arrows are the z-axis, and the green is the y-axis, which is going up and down. And as you move the part, you can see they also change on the position property. So we're just going to change this to 20 studs by 20 studs by 20 studs, and that's going to make the part nice and big. You can see the x, y, and z values are now 20, and the part is stuck in the ground. So we're just going to drag that above ground here. So this is what this is how the die will be shaped. We now are going to just make it. We're going to change the color for it to be completely white. Like this. We'll go institutional white, and I'll set the material to smooth plastic. Okay, now we are going to make the brick anchored for now, so that it stays in the air, and when we're going to roll it, we can unanchor it. Okay, so now that we have got the part, we need to add some numbers on the faces of the die. So we're going to enter the toolbox, and you should see this pop up, and we're going to click on the little tab here where it says models, and I'm going to click on images. Okay, and this will allow us to search the Roblox library, and we can take an image that someone else has made. Now, if you've got an image that you made yourself that you want to use, you can click on inventory and go from there. So we've clicked on images, and we're just going to search for dice and then the number that we want, so 1. And then we're just going to click on it, on the image, and then we can select the part that we want this image to go onto. So we just click it, and that creates a decal. Alright, so inside of the part, you can see there is now a decal object, which basically just shows the image. So the texture here is the ID of that image. So a decal can be applied to a part to show an image on it. Click and click on duplicate, or you can press Control and D or Command D if you're on a Mac. So now that we've duplicated it, you can't see the clone because it's in the exact same position as the other clone. So we can just move it away, and we now have 2 die. But as I said in the previous video about names of parts, they both have the same name, part. So we need to name each one dice 1 and dice 2, like this. Okay, so now we've got our 2 dice, and we can put them in the air like this. Now, just to make it a little bit more random, what we're going to do is we're going to move one die underneath the other, so that when they both come down, the top one is going to bounce off the second one. Okay, and we'll also just rotate them a little bit, so that they bounce around a bit before they hit the ground. which just makes it feel more random as well. So now that we've got our 2 die, we can start scripting, because they're both anchored. If we run the game, nothing currently happens. So we need to tell a script what we want to happen with these dies. Okay, so we're going to insert a script into the server script service. Oops, I did a module script. We just need a normal script. So click on script, and then we're going to simply reference our die. So game.workspace.dice1, we'll do dice1 first, .anchored, okay, we're finding the property. Remember in the last video we learned how to reference the dice. So the dice is inside of the workspace, and it's got a property called anchored, and anchored is, it determines whether the part just stays in the air or whether it falls to the ground. And we're going to set anchored to false because we want it to fall, we want gravity to push it down, okay? So this is going to basically roll the first die. We want to wait for a small bit of time until we roll the second die, okay? And this will allow the first die to fall before the second, so that it bounces off this die here, okay? So this is, oh, that's die 2. Let's just move that down there. So we want dice 1 to fall first, hit dice 2, which will make it a little bit more random, and then dice 2 will fall as well after that. So we're going to have to do a wait. Now wait just delays the script, okay? So if we added a wait here, so we do wait, and then we do a pair of brackets or parentheses, and then if you put a number inside of here, so 1, that's going to delay the script from doing anything else. So if I had another line of code, game.workspace.dice2.anchored equals false, which is going to roll the second die. Okay, this is a comment, by the way. So the script just ignores it, and it helps you understand. You can write notes so you know what each line does. So this is going to roll the first die, and it's basically going to this die is going to fall. But then we're going to wait 1 second, and then after that delay, we're going to unanchor the second dice. So the script is going to pause before it executes the next line, okay? Because you know that the script executes line by line. If we have a wait, it's just going to stop right here, wait the specified amount of time inside of the brackets, so in this case 1 second, and after that 1 second, it's going to unanchor the second dice, okay? I'm going to change this to half a second, so 0.5. And now if we go and try this out, you can see the first dice let's see if we can change the wait here to 1 second, so you can notice the change. So the first dice hits dice 2, and then the second dice falls as well. So you see that they don't both fall at the same time. The dice 2 falls a second after the first. So we have just created a nice little dice game there, but to make it a little bit more interesting, we can change the gravity property of the workspace. Now, if you go into the workspace and have the properties window open, I touched on this in a previous video, the gravity property. I used it as an example, but if you don't know what gravity is, it's basically a force which pushes down on objects that are in the game. Or say for example these dice in the air, if gravity is higher, the higher gravity is, so the bigger the number is, then the higher the force which is going to push down on these bricks. And so when gravity is higher, the bricks are going to fall much quicker. So if I change gravity to 500, 196.2 is the default. If I change it to 500, you can see they fall a lot quicker, and it looks more like a pair of dice. So I'm going to change the weight back to 0.5. I'm also going to move up this die a little bit, and let's try this out again. So they both fall to the ground, and there we go. We rolled a 4. So we've just created a cool little dice game using what we learnt. So hopefully that taught you something, and it shows how you can put the things we learnt to use. It's still very, very basic, but trust me, we'll do more of these cool projects, and they'll get cooler as we go along. So just stick with it, and I'll see you in the next one. So if you want to go to the next... Welcome back to the 4th video in the scripting series. Now, in the previous video, we used what we'd learnt throughout the series so far to create a quick little dice game where you could roll dice and get a number. But today we're going to be learning about variables. Now, I did touch upon that in the previous video very briefly, but we're going to go deeper on what variables are in Roblox scripting. So let me give you an example first before I tell you how they work. So we've got our dice game here, okay, and each time that we want to change a property of the dice, we have to say game.workspace.dice1, okay. Now, if we had our dice and they were inside a folder, if they were inside a model, if we grouped them together and we named this model dice, and then maybe if it was in another model called game parts, okay, you would see that in order to reference the dice, we would have to say game.workspace.gameparts.dice and then dice1, okay. Game parts, dice 1, okay, yep, just making sure I got that right. So you'd have to say that every time that you wanted to change a property. Or even if it was just still in the workspace, you would still have to write out game.workspace.dice1 every time. And if you wanted to change lots of properties of a dice, say you wanted to change its colour as well, then you'd have to say the same thing again. Game.workspace.gameparts.dice.dice2.brick_color equals brick_color.new, and we could say really red, okay. So you can see, even though this works and it still goes red, you can tell that this is really long and it's boring to have to write out every time you want to change a property. Now, this is where variables come in, and a variable can be thought of kind of like a shortcut, okay. A variable is used to so let me show you. It's used to hold some information. So instead of saying game.workspace.gameparts.dice all the time, I could create a shortcut for that, and I could say I could make a variable for this dice, and whenever I just said the name of that variable, let's imagine we called it dice, it would do the exact same thing as saying game.workspace.gameparts.dice, okay? And just to show you, so to create a variable, you have to say local first. Now, You can say it without local, but it's good practice to always put local before your variables, and I'll explain why in a future video. So we say local, and then we give our variable a name. So the name of this variable can be anything, as long as you haven't got a variable that's named the same thing. So I'm going to call my variable dice, okay? And so I've given it a name, and now I need to give my dice, a variable, a value, okay? So this dice name is going to be equal to a value. It's going to hold some information. So think of it like a storage box, and then you put the information inside of it, okay? So dice is equal to game.workspace.gameparts.dice, okay? So instead of saying game.workspace.gameparts.dice, we can now just say dice. And if I copy this and I paste it instead of game.workspace, and then you put the information inside of it, okay? So dice is equal to game.workspace.gameparts.dice, okay?
Alrighty guys, it is the Dev King here, back with another video, and in today's video guys, I'm going to be showing you how to make tools. So look at this. Look at that. Okay, so this is my first tool. Well, not really, because I've made tools before, but anyways, this is what a tool is, and basically it's like a little weapon you can equip, and you can make it do stuff. So yeah, so I press 1, and I equip it, and you tutorials go to the link, probably welcome waited. Seriously, this video like I use, because I'll show you all about tools. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this, but also guys, this video might be a little bit long because tools are they're not hard, but there's a lot that goes into them, so yeah. Okay guys, so first things first, I'm going to go ahead and make my tool. So in Roblox, you have these instances called tools. So if you go over here into the workspace, you can go.
So instead of saying game.workspace.gameparts.dice, we can now just say dice. And if I that's named the same thing, so .workspace can be thought, imagine we called it, to have to write out every time you want to change a property. Now this is where variables come in, and a variable can be thought of kind of like a shortcut. Okay, a variable is used to so let me show you. It's used to hold some information. So instead of saying game.workspace.gameparts.dice all the time, I could create a shortcut for that, and I could say I could make a variable for this dice, and whenever I just said the name of that variable, let's imagine we called it dice, it would do the exact same thing as saying game.workspace.gameparts.dice, okay? And just to show you, so to create a variable, you have to say local first. Now you can say it without local, but it's good practice to always put local before your variables, and I'll explain why in a future video. So we say local, and then we give our variable a name. So the name of this variable can be anything, as long as you haven't got a variable that's named the same thing. So I'm going to call my variable dice, okay? And so I've given it a name, and now I need to give my dice, a variable, a value. Okay, so this dice name is going to be equal to a value. It's going to hold some information. So think of it like a storage box, and then you put the information inside of it, okay? So dice is equal to game.workspace.gameparts.dice, okay? So instead of saying game.workspace.gameparts.dice, we can now just say dice. And if I copy this and I paste it instead of game.workspace.gameparts.dice every time, okay, you can see that it has greatly shortened our code, okay, and we've only had to say dice twice. We haven't had to write out game.workspace.gameparts.dice every single time. So now that we are using dice for these two lines, I could change the contents of this variable. Now, just a variable, put the information inside of it. Okay, parts.dice every time. Instead of saying game.workspace.value, it's going to hold some information. So, and then you put the information inside of it. Okay, so dice is equal to game.workspace.gameparts.dice. Okay, so instead of saying game.workspace.gameparts.dice, we can now just say dice. And if I copy this and I paste it instead of game.workspace.gameparts.dice every time, okay, you can see that it has greatly shortened our code. Okay, and we've only had to say dice twice. We haven't had to write out game.workspace.gameparts.dice every single time. So now that we are using dice for these two lines, I could change the contents of this variable and it would update for both of these lines. I wouldn't have to update them one by one, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. But let's test this out and see if it still works. We should still have the same result, and they should both be unanchored. There we go. They still get unanchored. It works just as fine, but we've saved ourselves from having to write out the same thing twice. And that is what a variable is. It's a shortcut because it holds information under a name, and then we can use that name of that variable time and time again instead of having to write this, instead of writing the same stuff out again. And we can shorten this even more. We could change our variable to be called dice1, and then we could just add .dice1 onto the end of this. And then we could copy and paste this variable for dice2 and just change the dice1 to dice2. And then, instead of saying dice.dice1, we could just say dice1.anchored equals false and dice2.anchored equals false. We've referenced the two dice once at the once for each dice at the top of our script. We've made the variable, and then later on we are basically referencing one time. If you're writing the same things out over and over again, you can assign values or content to a variable name and then use that name instead of having to write the same stuff out again. And that was a very, very brief introduction to variables. But we've set our variables here to be objects. The value of each variable here is an object, because we're saying dice1 and dice2. These are both objects, you know, because they're parts. So a variable could be anything. You could have a variable for the workspace, so local workspace equals game.workspace, even though you wouldn't really need a workspace variable, because you can say workspace anyway. That's like a Roblox defined variable, which the script already knows about. But you could create a variable for other services. So if you wanted to get replicated storage, you could say, or lighting, for example, you could say local lighting equals game.lighting. Okay, so instead of having to say game.lighting all the time, in future you could just say lighting. So that's one way variables can be used to save you time. But as I said, a variable doesn't always have to be an object or like a path to something. A variable could also, well, it could be any data type. And you know, we have the four main data types in Roblox. We have a string, we have number, we have a Boolean value, which can be true or it could be false. What's the other data type? Oh yes, an object as well. So game.workspace.camera, for example, that is an object. So these are the four main data types, okay? And a variable can be any of these. So we could say local text, that could be the name of our variable, and then we could set this text, we could assign a string to it, okay? Because a string data type is some text, and inside of here we could write the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, okay? And now, I think I've gone over this before, the print command. If you don't know about it, print basically puts a message in the output. So I could print hello there, okay? I could print hello, run the game, and it prints hello there. Don't worry about these errors, by the way. So that's what print does. Okay, what we could do is you could write the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, okay? And that would print it out. We could print it out 10 times, okay? Let's try this again. So you can see it prints out quick brown fox 10 times. And then, what if you wanted to change the text, okay? Or you made a spelling mistake in them all. You'd have to update them one by one, right? Every time. But instead of doing that, you could say print text. And you could then print it out even more times. You could print it out 20 times if you wanted to, okay? And you're going to get the same output. If we run the game again, it's going to print the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. And so it's printing this because it knows that text is a variable. If text wasn't a variable, then there would be an error, because the text, it just prints nil, because the text isn't in quote marks, because it's not a string. Okay, if it was a string, it would be pink like that, but it's not. So what the variable does is, when we go to print, it looks up this variable. Okay, we've found the variable text. It's found that it's equal to the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, and so it basically substitutes text with this string, okay, for all of them. So when you print texts, it's going to print the value that is assigned to text. So again, if we clear the output and go again, it prints out the quick brown fox. And now, because we are using text every time, and we're just printing out the contents of whatever the text change, call it my number equals 30, and then you could print out what my number is. Okay, you could also say print 30, and that would do the same, but you could say print my number. But then if you change the my number variable, it's going to print out whatever it's equal to. So it will look up what the variable is. Okay, it's set to 500, and it's going to print out 500 because we've assigned 500 to this variable. Now you have to define a variable first before you print it or use it. So if we moved this print above when we define this variable, we're going to get an error, because scripts, okay, we got nil, and nil means nothing, okay, because scripts they run step by step. So the first command, the first line that it's going to execute is this print. But it's like, well, hold on, I don't know what my number is. You haven't defined it yet, because we haven't got to that stage yet, because we're defining it down here where we've got the local my number, and the equal sign tells us that we're setting it to something. So my number, let's move it back down. What we can also do is we can do mathematics on this number. So we could say print my number, add 10. And that's going to look up what my number is. So it's going to be 500. It's going to take that number and going to add 10 to it. So we should have 510. There we go, 510. So we can do all kinds of maths on the numbers. You could do a divide. 500 divided by 10, that's 50. There we go. And you can see how you put the name of the variable, but it substitutes it in pretty much. Alright? And you may be wondering, well, why can't you just say 500 instead? Well, that's because variables are useful for when you're using the same number over and over again, okay? So say we had another line that did my number, and we wanted to add 50 to it. We could say my number equals my number, add 50. So we're getting the current value of my number, which is 500, and then we're setting it to what it currently is, 500, with 50 added onto it. So it would become 550. And then we would be taking my number, which is now 550, because we added 50 to it here, and it's working in steps, and it's dividing it by 10. So we should get 55. There we go. So a variable would be useful when you wanted to store, well, not store, well, keep a number, say, in like temporary storage. So, for example, you could have the number of time left before a new game starts, and then you might keep subtracting 1 from it every second, and then you would be able to check when my number has got down to 0. That's something that we'll be looking at in a future video. But what you should know is that variables, they're used to store information. Well, not store, more like hold information, okay? We can assign values to a variable name, and then instead of having to write out the same value again, or if we wanted to keep track of a certain value, we would use a variable. Now, if we didn't use a variable in this case, okay, we got rid of the definition, and we said 500 equals, and we just did 500 plus 50, okay, and then we did 550 divided by 10, you can see how, actually, you can't see, but what I'm going to say is you can't keep track of a number as you go along. You can't just say 500 plus 50, you have to use variables so that you can go in steps, if you know what I mean. Because with variables, you can firstly define it to be one number, you can do something to that same number, and then, you know, do lots of different math calculations on it, and then you can get an end result. And you can store that value as a variable and keep track of it, look it up, add to it, subtract to it, etc. So that's what a variable is. It's kind of like a temporary store in your script. This video has gone on far longer than I'd hoped for it to have gone on for, and we haven't gone over variables fully yet, but just think of a variable as like a temporary store of information that you need in your script, which you can use to save time. Okay, if you go go back to the original example, you can set it to an object, and you don't have to keep saying the reference to that object over and over again. So that was variables. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll probably make a second video on.
Over 35% of men in America report experiencing outfit anxiety at some point in their lives. With proven
Hello, welcome to the 5th video in my Roblox scripting series. Today we're going to be looking at instancing. In the previous video we learnt about variables. I recommend you go check it out before you watch this one, else it won't make much sense. So we're going to jump straight in. So instancing allows you to insert things into your game from a script. Now we can insert things such as a part by just clicking on this button, or by going to Model, Advanced Objects, and selecting something here. But what if we want to insert something at a specific time, or something that we want to use later on? We will use a script for that. So let's insert a script into serve script service, and I'm going to show you how to insert things from a script. So what we're going to do to insert something into the game is we're going to use instance. Okay, so when you say instance, that just means like an object in Roblox, and then we want to say we want to insert one of these. So we say instance.new. Okay, and you can see here it says create a new object of type val. So val is going to be the object that we want to insert. So we say instance.new, and then we do a pair of brackets or parentheses after the new, and then inside these brackets we write the name of the objects we want to insert. So a full list of the objects you can insert can be found by going to Model, Advanced Objects, and then you just find the thing you want to insert. So we're going to insert a part. If we go to P, there it is. In fact, no, let's just search for it. Part, that's what we're going to insert. So you can insert any of those. So in speech marks, we just write part, okay, and it auto fills here. So once you've done that, that will insert the object into your game. Now, if we run here, you will see that nothing happens, okay, and that is because we haven't told the script where we want to put this, okay. So as I've said before, if you want to insert something that can be seen, you put it in the workspace, as that's where everything that we see in the game world gets rendered. So we need to tell the script where to put this part. So there are two ways to do this. The first way is to just put a comma after the name of the thing you want to insert, and then you write the path of where you want to put it. Okay, so if I want to put it in workspace, I can just say comma game.workspace, and if we run the game, this is going to insert the part in the workspace. There it is. Yeah, there we go, it got inserted. So we've told the script what we want to insert and where it's going to be placed in the workspace, but we can't actually give it any more information right now. The only things we can tell it is what it's going to be and where it's going to go. They are the only two things we can pass to an instance.new function. So what if we wanted to give it some properties, maybe like, give it some color, maybe change its anchored property? We need to change these properties for something we want to instance. Maybe we want to put it in a certain location, change its size, etc. So to do this, we're going to take this instance.new calling of this inbuilt function, and we're going to set it to a variable. So let's just say local, and we're going to give our variable a name, so we can call it my part. You can call it whatever you want, and we're going to make it equal to this instance.new, because when we call instance.new here, what it's actually doing is it's creating this part, and then basically it's returning. The first way is to just put a comma after insert, so you can insert any of those. So in speech marks we just write part, okay, and it auto fills here. So once you've done that, that will insert the object into your game. Now if we run here, you will see that nothing happens, okay, and that is because we haven't told the script where we want to put this, okay. So as I've said before, if you want to insert something that can be seen, you put it in the workspace, as that's where everything that we see in the game world gets rendered. So we need to tell the script where to put this part. So there are two ways to do this. The first way is to just put a comma after the name of the thing you want to insert, and then you write the path of where you want to put it. Okay, so if I want to put it in workspace, I can just say comma game.workspace, and if we run the game, this is going to insert the part. Okay, so if I want to put it in workspace, I can just say comma game.workspace, and if we run the game, this is going to insert the object you want to insert. So we're going to insert a part. If we go to P, there it is. In fact, no, let's just search for it. Part, that's what we're going to insert. So you can insert any of those. So in speech marks we just write part, okay, and it auto fills here. So once you've done that, that will insert the object into your game. Now if we run here, you will see that nothing happens, okay, and that is because we haven't told the script where we want to put this, okay. So as I've said before, if you want to insert something that can be seen, you put it in the workspace, as that's where everything that we see in the game world gets rendered. So we need to tell the script where to put this part. So there are two ways to do this. The first way is to just put a comma after the name of the thing you want to insert, and then you write the path of where you want to put it. Okay, so if I want to put it in workspace, I can just say comma game.workspace, and if we run the game, this is going to insert the part in the workspace. There it is. Yeah, there we go, it got inserted. So, we've told the script what we want to insert and where it's going to be placed in the workspace, but we can't actually give it any more information right now. The only things we can tell it is what it's going to be and where it's going to go. They are the only two things we can pass to an instance.new function. So what if we wanted to give it some properties, maybe like, you know, give it some color, maybe change its anchored property? We need to change these properties for something we want to instance. Maybe we want to put it in a certain location, change its size, etc. So to do this, we're going to take this instance.new calling of this inbuilt function, and we're going to set it to a variable. So let's just say local, and we're going to give our variable a name, so we can call it my part. You can call it whatever you want, and we're going to make it equal to this instance.new, because when we call instance.new here, what it's actually doing is it's creating this part, and then basically it's returning the part that was created to this variable. So the variable my part is now equal to the part which we just inserted. Now that we've made it a variable, we can change the properties of this part. So think of my part as just being the part that we just inserted. We can now change all of the properties that a part has. So we could say, for example, change its transparency, and we could set that to 0.5. And we could say my part.anchored equals true. Okay, we could even set its position. So I'm not sure if we've covered positioning things yet with vector3, but you can set its position like this, and you can put it in a certain place. So we could say 5, 5, 5, and that will put it in that location. So now if we run the game again, and we wait for it to load, the part should be created, but it should have these properties assigned to it as well. So there we go, the part was created. It's 5 studs off the ground in its position, as you can see. There we go. It's also anchored. And the transparency is set to 0.5. So you can change properties of the thing that you insert as long as you make it a variable. Now, last part of this video, I told you about this second, well, actually telling the script where to put this object by using the second argument in this function of game.workspace. Now, this is actually bad practice, and you shouldn't tell the script where you want the object to go until you've defined all of these properties, because basically it's just less efficient for the script to put it in the workspace and then change its properties. So the best practice is to actually get rid of this and just instance it like that, and only provide to the instance function the name of the object that you're instance it. So the best practice is to actually get rid of this and just instance it like that, and only provide to the instance function the name of the object that you're going to insert. And then once you've applied all of these properties, then you can say myPart.parent equals game.workspace. Now you need to tell the script where it's going to go, else nothing is going to be instanced. Well, it is, but you're not going to see it, because if we get rid of the parent, the script has created it, but it hasn't actually placed it anywhere, so there is no part. So we have to say myPart.parent, and then we can tell it where we want it to go. And that could be anywhere. It could be workspace, it could be server storage, but we're going to insert it into game.workspace, and if we run the game, there we go. So for best practice, put that parent right at the end once you have defined. all of your properties.
When I first fell in the pit, it was the funniest thing ever, dude. Like, when I didn't do it on purpose, it was... And then when, like, the cube pushed me down. So funny. Well, let me take a look. You're just pushing apart? That is kind of cool. I didn't think about using it like that.